I don't think there's too many parts of The Lion King that too many people have a legitimate critique against. Sure, not all of the songs are to everybody's taste, and there's a line here or there that you could cut out, and there's always going to be somebody that doesn't care for a movie, but I've met very few people who don't at least recognize the artistry in The Lion King, if not consider it one of the greatest animated films in US American history. So I'm not coming in with some big criticism, and in fact, I have no delusions of grandeur. I don't think anything I could come up with holds a candle to the original. That's not what this video is about. Instead, this is about a single scene that I've found a little bit out of place, and what I know as a zoologist that alters my perception of the story. See, one of The Lion King's greatest strengths is its theming. The film is set strictly within South Africa. We never get a narrowed down location, but that makes sense since the cast of characters wouldn't use human geography. Still, if we had to guess, it's probably Kenya or Tanzania given the geology. As one of the most beautiful Disney films, I'm glad that we are very rarely brought out of the universe the film inhabits. Very little distracts us from the ecosystem in which the characters live by reminding us of humans or things humans made. However, some animated films will use references to score cheap laughs, or, if I'm being more generous, tie their audience to the fictional world by reminding them of something they like. I'd be lying if I said that's my favorite trope, but I'd also be lying if I said that it never works. But after Aladdin, where Robin Williams completely nailed the whole pop culture reference thing in a way that was both funny and in line with the character, a couple of animated films started having just one or two side characters make references to pop culture they shouldn't understand, rather than the whole cast. Sometimes this worked, like when Mushu quotes a couple of movies in Mulan, sometimes not so much. But at the very least, it can focus the lines that otherwise make no sense to a limited perspective. In the case of The Lion King, the role goes to Timon and Pumbaa. It's okay, they aren't the best part of the film, but certainly have their charms, and it's through them that a film set entirely in the wilds of southeastern Africa manages to reference The Tokens, Taxi Driver, Kauai Ka Hua Huai, and In the Heat of the Night. If there's one thing 90s kids loved, it was noir mysteries about racism and abortion. But anyways, with these two, it lets the rest of the cast stay focused within their world, having some funny lines but not really winking at the camera with any references. Except for one kind of out-of-place scene. After Scar has taken over the Pride Lands shared hunting grounds with hyenas, possibly eaten Mufasa's corpse, and put unsustainable pressure on the primary consumers of the ecosystem, the habitat heavily degrades, all within 3 or 4 years, and what was once fertile savanna now looks like a post-nuclear wasteland. Scar lounges upon his throne like the gay-coded Shakespearean tyrant he is, and Zazu is caged against the wall. And Zazu, a hornbill who, as far as we can tell, has never met a human, much less studied their culture, is singing Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen, and It's a Small World, and I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts. Even ignoring the optics of the first song here, why are these three included? Now, yes, obviously these are included as a joke, but this joke is kind of out of place and not exactly one of my favorites. They're a bit of a non sequitur and very out of place for both the character and for the rest of the film. If this was Timon and Pumbaa singing them, that'd be one thing, but the fact that it's Zazu, who up until this point has not broken the fourth wall at all, makes it a little bit unusual. However, honestly, what got me thinking about this scene was not the idea of the fourth wall, but the ecology of the hornbill. See, Zazu's a hornbill. The film doesn't say what species he is. The internet says he's a red-billed hornbill. I can't find any primary Disney source that says he is, and in my opinion, he doesn't really look like one, but even if we go with that, the points that I'm about to list still apply. See, there are only a handful of things able to eat hornbills, even the small ones, like the red-billed. And you know who's not on that very short list? Lions and hyenas. Throughout the film, Zazu is at the mercies of these land predators and is very deferential and submissive to them. But the actual animal would never be caught dead to rights by something with a vertical leap of only 12 feet. Add in the tax's drought resistance, high intelligence, and the fact that Zazu himself can easily lift thousands of pounds over his head, and there should be no reason a hornbill would just submit to living under the iron paw of a lion. Until you start to look at it from a different perspective. Hornbills are very family-oriented. While they'd be able to survive well enough by themselves, and sometimes do, it's rare to see an adult that doesn't live with its partner or in a small family group. They're also monogamous, and thus heavily loyal to a specific individual, not just any other bird. Now, we don't see any other hornbills in the film, but Zazu is clearly loyal to Mufasa and his family. In fact, I'd say Zazu is actually part of the lion's pride. And Mufasa's likely not the first lion Zazu has served. It's unlikely for any African hornbill to live less than 15 years. If Zazu is a red-billed hornbill, he wouldn't even be old enough to have kids until he's 9. Other species can reach into the 20s, 30s, and even 40s. But again, even if we take the lowest possible age for an African hornbill, Zazu would live almost twice the length of a male African lion in the wild. So while it's certainly possible he's the same age as Mufasa and Scar, given his maturity, it's likely he was around for much of their father's reign, and maybe even their grandfather's. Mufasa was likely between the ages of 4 and 8 when he died, and Scar, his younger brother, being older than Zazu, is highly unlikely. So for some reason, Zazu has stuck around this family, likely for multiple generations. But why, exactly? Yeah, I know the lions are meant to be the royal family of the Pride Lands, but we don't see any other animals spend their entire day in service of the lions. What makes Zazu special? In universe, he's basically a babysitter and a secretary. But why not just have a lion fill this role? Why did Mufasa, Scar, and Simba, as well as potentially their predecessors, initially want Zazu around before he became part of the family? Well, ecology can tell us something interesting here as well. In real life, hornbills and lions have no real interaction with one another. However, red and yellow-billed hornbills actually do have a mutualistic symbiotic relationship with a different species of terrestrial carnivoran, the dwarf mongoose. The small hornbills will benefit by eating the insects disturbed by the mongoose's foraging. This positive would apply for Zazu as well. As Mufasa walks through the grass, no doubt insects would hop out of the way, giving Zazu a chance to eat. But the mongooses like to have the hornbills around because they will give out warning calls should any predator approach. And again, this actually lines up with the film. While some people will try to say an apex predator like a lion has no predators, in truth, an apex is very rarely, if ever, 100% safe from predation all of the time. This especially applies to the cubs, so a hornbill watching the lion cubs and then going to get the father when they get in trouble may not happen in the wild, or I should say, doesn't happen in the wild, but it definitely makes sense for the movie. So what, did I just waste time to explain why it makes sense for a cartoon bird to babysit lions? Well, yes. But it also serves to my overall point, being that if I had one scene to change in The Lion King, it would be this one between Zazu and Scar. Zazu is not with the lions because he needs them, because hornbills don't need lions. He's also not with the lions because he fears them, because hornbills aren't afraid of lions. He's with the lions because they can help each other, and like the family-oriented bird he is, over time he developed a close connection with them. So even when it isn't advantageous to stay with them, he does. And there's a very good chance he was major domo to the previous king as well. Zazu may have even known Scar since birth. So if he's hanging around a lion, it's not because they caught him and stuck him in a cage. It's not because they could eat him if he doesn't listen to them. It's because he's doing the same thing hornbills do for mongooses. He's trying to warn him. Were I to rewrite this thing, Zazu wouldn't be singing spirituals or Disney songs he shouldn't be able to know. He'd be begging Scar to come to his senses, reminding him how his father would handle droughts, pleading for him to serve as a king should, comparing the monster he is now to the sweet cub that he helped raise. And sure, Scar would get mad, he'd get furious, he might even leap at Zazu to try to grab him, but he'd always be out of reach. Zazu isn't there as Scar's prisoner, he's there as his conscience. And no matter how much Scar wants to destroy that part of him, his voice of reason and compassion since childhood, it always sticks around, because he's part of his family. Whether he likes it or not, he's not going anywhere. Zazu couldn't save Mufasa, and as far as he knows, he couldn't save Simba, but he's going to try to save Scar. Again, I want to make it clear that in no way could I have made a better film than The Lion King. But if there was just a single scene I'd change, it would be this. To keep the theming of the film more focused, to more accurately reflect the ecology of Eastern Africa, and to give Zazu a more complete character. I don't think this would make the film better, and it could definitely mess with the flow. But at the very least, I think a similar movie could work pretty well by having Zazu be Scar's conscience. It would also humanize Scar a little bit, in a way that might not redeem him, but definitely show some more pathos. I mean, I guess I could always watch the Lion King remake and see how they handled Zazu. Okay, sorry, no, that was a joke. I won't be doing that anytime soon.